Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Living with Crohn's Live. I'm Sherry Lip. I am the founder of Happy Gut for Life, and today I am going to be talking about what is a holistic approach to gut health. So, I'm going to be talking about how it pertains to gut health with IBD and kind of in general too, as well. So, in a nutshell, a holistic approach means that we are looking at not just what we eat, but also, what we eat, our diet, um, eating mindfully, which is kind of a little different than just diet alone. It's kind of really taking into consideration what we're eating, when we're eating it, and how it affects us. And then also mental health and kind of our spirit. And that can mean different things for different people. For some people, that might be more of a religious angle. And for some, it just might be your overall, like your spirit, like the way you feel in general. And so by looking at all those things, we can really hone in on what affects our gut health. And so because we don't really think about it a lot, but gut health affects us. How we feel mentally. It can make depression worse if our gut is out of balance. And so we like to look at the whole picture. The other thing is that stress can disrupt your gut. So it's a whole cycle. And so if you're feeling very stressed, that can cause a flare up. And that is something that a lot of times we don't really think about as like what's going on in our life. I've talked about this a lot, but it really goes into the holistic approach of like what I do now as opposed to what I did when I first started the diet. And sometimes when I wasn't getting results, like I was good for a while and then I wasn't. And that's when I was going through a particularly very stressful time in my life. And also feeling kind of disillusioned with the diet as I wasn't taking into consideration everything else, my mental health, stress levels. I wasn't trying to balance that. I was kind of just like, oh, nothing's working anymore, and so I stopped the diet, and kind of ate whatever I wanted, because partly because I felt cured and partly because I just felt like it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do anymore. So I had to really take a look at that. How stress impacted me. It took me a little while, and that's something I like to help people with because I think I saw somebody say once that they felt like, well, incorporating stress into our IBD, into a flare up, means it's my fault, and it does not mean that at all. We can't control everything that happens to us. We can control how we react to it. We can't always control how we feel about it in any exact moment. Maybe we can kind of get control of how we feel about something, how we're going to react to it, but immediately it's going to be a huge stress. And so stress impacts our body in a way that it kind of should, like in a very stressful time, like something immediate, like you're getting chased or something by a criminal or, car accident or something very negative, but also something could be something positive that, you're going on stage or you got a new job, but you're going, your first day and you're nervous. Nervousness is also a form of stress. It might be good nervousness and you're going to get over it. You're probably going to be able to kind of balance it a little easier because you're not worried about it's going to pass. Maybe you don't want to eat right before you go on stage, but you're going to eat later. That's not as big of a deal, but still the same response in our body is fight or flight. So when we are in fight or flight mode, either one, our digestive system is not a priority for our body. So it kind of shuts down. So it's going to tighten up. So what do you do if you're having ongoing stress? We've all had that feeling of like, I don't feel like eating. Maybe there's, somebody close to you passed away, or, like you lost your job, you're not hungry, but that's fine for it's a day or a little bit of, a few days. But what if you are in just constant stress, and it could be, maybe your mental health is suffering and you don't really quite know how to handle that. That's something to think about with, your digestion. There's not one like a magic wand that's going to fix everything. Like if you eat this way, your depression is going to go away or anything. I'm not saying that. It's not medical advice. It's just a way of looking at the big picture. And so that's one thing, if we are very stressed in our life and things can get stressful, we have ups and downs and there can be those events like I just talked about, that's going to affect our digestion. And so I want to kind of think carefully about that because, like I said, I have talked to many people who kind of discount that. And that's partially because we've embraced diet as something we do to help manage our symptoms. And so we're like, we've done it. But it might not be, that's a one piece of a puzzle, especially when talking about autoimmune conditions where we don't know what the cause is. But it's not the be all and end all of our health. And because gut health, it affects us so greatly. And they're finding out more and more about how health affects our whole body, and our mind and our mental health. And so it's kind of all one big picture. And that's something I've really, in the most recent years, since I started the diet 20 years ago, it's something I've been thinking about the last few years is how do I maintain and how do I get to a place where I'm like happy with everything I'm doing? And we're not going to be like that all the time. Don't get me wrong. But for me, I was very, very, I'll just, a personal story. When I did go off the diet, I was just so frustrated and sad and felt left out. And on top of that, my mom passed away and I got a new job and we moved, we bought a new house. And so and then my dog passed away. It was just all these things hitting me and me feeling like, I don't know what to do to maintain my health. And so I kind of stopped. And that is where I want to help people get through those moments where it's even if you're, you got all the sides, of your health. And so you're stopping everything, you're probably going to feel worse. Whereas if we can say what's going to get you past this and diet and your mental health, and how do we manage, keep this flare from happening, because I got a little one and I was lucky and it wasn't major, but it still happened. And I'm still I blamed myself then, but all those other things that happened, they weren't my fault. I just had to choose more carefully how to react to them and to understand what was going on in my body and how my gut health was affecting my overall health. So there's that factor. There's the mental health factor. And like I said, if we're in a very stressful situation, what do we do to manage that? And that's going to be a different answer for everybody because it could be a situation that you need to get out of. Or it might be a situation that just needs to pass. It just needs time. And so I like to think about, how do I control my diet to help manage that? And in some cases, it might be adding a little more restriction, but some cases it might be actually adding a little less, and that's what I like to look at because food, like I've talked about many times, food is part of our emotional health. And so then that's where I was. I, over restricted, and then I just hated everything because I was like unhappy out on the outside and unhappy with the food I was eating. And so I was like, I hate it all. So I'm just going to do what I want. Now I'm at a really great point of happiness with my food, and I don't really miss the other things. I've created so much for myself, and then kind of learned how that balance works that I'm very happy with it. And I think having that understanding of what you're doing for yourself, because I think for a lot of people, you're doing this and you're not kind of seeing all the benefit and you're like, why am I even doing it? And that's what I like to help people with too, is because we have to, know what we're doing. We have to have people, are very emotional in their decision making. And so we want to feel like we've made the right decision. And so if we feel like we're not sure about that decision, whether it's SCD or GAPS or something else, if you're not feeling good about it, how are you going to continue? And so that's where I kind of the holistic approach, because it's like, well, maybe it's not the food. Maybe it's something else going on in your life. And that's what's creating your unhappiness, but you're kind of blaming the food. Or maybe you needed something and you didn't let yourself have it. So this is a story it's hard for me to tell a little bit. So when I had reached a point of healing, I went to my grandpa's house for my birthday, and it was something that my grandma had always handled because she had passed away a few years before, and then I'd probably done other things. But my grandpa wanted to do this for my birthday, and so we ate, and the food was fine. But he came out with this pint of very fancy ice cream, and he said, "This is only for birthdays." He's so proud of it. I don't remember even what kind it was, but it was a premium ice cream. And I didn't have any. And kind of to this day, it makes me I'm tearing up a little bit talking about it because sometimes I wish I just had it. And then so that's what I'm talking because I'm still sad about it. And this was like over 10 years ago, probably like 15 years ago. And I still feel a little sad that and I know a lot of people were probably like, you made the right decision because it was, the ice cream was outside of your diet. But and maybe I did, but it doesn't stop my emotional reaction because my grandpa's passed away since, and I never get to have that moment again. And he was just, I don't know, he was so proud of buying this ice cream, and it might feel not important to some people, but for me, it makes me very sad to think that I just was like, no, I can't have that. I probably was polite about it, but I just don't think I gave the right reaction, and maybe I should have had some, maybe it's fine that I didn't, but I just wanted, bringing it up to say what an emotional pull food can have for us with family, especially with family or friends or moments in time. So I just want to say, don't feel bad if you had the ice cream, you're in that situation. Don't feel like you did the wrong thing. Um, we're just getting through life, and so I like to tell that story sometimes. I don't know where I stand on the outcome because, time went by. It wasn't like he was mad about it. It was just, it makes me sad to think that I was so like, I just can't have that. Sorry. I know you went out of your way and got this and you were really excited about it, but, I feel like I kind of brushed it off. And so that's where, today, I bring the ice cream that I made, or, maybe I have ice cream is one of the few little things I've had a couple of times over the past few years. Um, and I was listening to another Crohn's warrior his name is, I think it's Dane Johnson. And he was talking about how he does have those celebration meals from time to time. And so I think that, from our mental health standpoint, and this is where I talk about holistic, because it's not one thing that's going to be the answer. And so if we look at the big picture of our life and our mental health and what's going on around us, maybe we can have the celebration meal. Maybe some people can, maybe some people can't. I feel like I've talked about this in some of the other podcasts, but it's very important to me that people reach that point of satisfaction where they're feeling really good about what they're doing. And that's something I definitely like to help people with. So that's a holistic approach, kind of in a nutshell, the big picture. I'm not doing this from a medical standpoint. I'm doing this more from an emotional standpoint. I really, it's just important to me that we don't think of ourselves as all the same when we're on this diet journey, because I see that a lot in comments and on, message boards, and where people are like, they drive themselves to a point of such guilt. If they have something wrong, if, I saw, a story of a teenager who got the wrong burger at the barbecue and didn't realize it and took the bite and was inconsolable. And, I don't want that. It's okay if you make a mistake, even if you don't feel quite good, and time will move on. The other thing is that, I saw, where a child had some candy, and, the parents were kind of looking at it from a point of, let's restrict even further. Let's take away even some of the things that are okay, a CD, if you're on a CD diet. fruit and yogurt and stuff, and let's like restrict back to intro because they had some candy, and like that's punishing for food, punishing ourselves, especially children, but really anybody. Children are people, we're people. Um, Punishing around food, punishing ourselves with food, or restricting food only leads to bad relationships with food. So it's like if you did something and you're like you regret it, you just have to move on. I don't. There's no, and if you're feeling bad, maybe you'll have some restriction, but if you're fine and you just are like, I shouldn't have done that, then maybe, or, I'm not going to do it next time, then you just move on. You don't need to punish yourself. But I think, especially when we're talking about children, we want them to build good relationships with food. Like I had talked about before, when I was talking about the whole, whether a whole family should do the same amount of restriction. So, and yes, thank you very much for your comment. That's the first time I've shared that story publicly. So it's, like I said, it's an emotional story for me. And some people might be like, it's always just ice cream, but for me, it wasn't. And so that's where I want to share with people that it's okay, if you have a strong bond with something that you've now no longer have. And maybe that's something you can get back in your life. And for me, I have recreated a lot of those things I loved when I was a kid. In fact, I'm actually thinking about buying, I found like an old copy of my parents' cookbook I might buy used and see if I can recreate some of those dishes. And I also have some cookbooks that belong to my great grandmother. And they have some interesting stories about people who have gluten intolerance in them. And this were published like probably in the early part of the last century, the early 1900s. So I'm going to take a look at that and I'll share that with you guys once I kind of go through it a little more. But it had some very interesting things, kind of a little bit progressive in my mind, but maybe there was more going on with that than I realized. But I've been able to look at, I have my box of my grandma's recipes, and I just made something from that I incorporated more paleo. It wasn't a CD 100%, but I'm still going to share it with you guys for people who want, who have a chocolate. That's the only thing that's not a CD in it. And so I started doing that, and it's just reached a point, like me really learning to cook has really reached a point of happiness for me. And with food is like getting to make those things that are special, instead of like when I first started, it was like meat, protein, vegetable, squash, very plainly cooked, very boring. And I see why people get sick of that. And so if I can help, please let me know. Please put your comments here or contact me, because I love helping, especially with cooking. I've actually opened up a new cooking class. So if you want any information on that now, I'm going to be sharing that soon. Let me know, but I'm happy to talk about that with anybody. And so thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, like I said, or message me. If you have any topics you'd like discussed on here, please let me know. And thanks so much. And I will see you next week.